we know is that he was unloading these shares as the S&P was rallying significantly, and it was setting a record high in mid-July. But now what we know is that as a result, he has this huge pile of cash that he now could deploy. So the question is, will he, and when?
He's been trying to deploy cash for a long time.
He has, and he in his in the most recent Berkshire annual meeting, they referenced that they have all this cash and that there has been issues of finding places to park it, and that's because deals are very few, far in between, and the prices have not come down. So they're waiting for deals that make sense to them as not the most risky investment, a solid investment that doesn't have quite as much volatility, something that would provide a steady long-term investment, which is what Bank of America was for Berkshire for all of these years. Since 2011, this was something that they bought and they held and they continued to hold until now. I would also note, though, that the selling is not the most significant cut. It's 8.8% through mid-July through August 1st.
8.8% of their Apple stake?
Of their Bank of America
stake. Oh, their
stake.
Bank of America stake.
But they're still the largest holder of Bank of America stock by a large margin. Why were they selling Bank?
I get. So we're going to talk to Matt in a second about why they would sell Apple, and he kind of knew they were going to. But why would they sell Bank America? It's not like they have a huge concentrated position there.
So it's today at around 12%. There's speculation shares, right? Of outstanding shares. There's speculation that Berkshire, the firm, is trying to get below the 10% mark. At that point, they don't have to report every time they sell like they're doing now and signaling to the market. And there's also, reporting. There's a lot of reporting and public. There's a lot of eyes on you when you're speculation when you do that, and you're such a large holder
and such a smart guy. Like, he likes to buy low and sell high, right? Maybe this is high. Maybe this is the top. Maybe this is what Warren Buffett is telling us. And this is the top of the market.
When he was selling in the beginning, it was at the top. The stock was trading at $44, and then their last statement that came out was showing that they were selling around 41. So if you just think about that $3 price difference, but now the stock is dipping well below that. So the question is he continuing to sell?
36 and change. So do you want to talk Apple?
Well, yeah, exactly. Because Bank America, yes, they have a big concentrate. In terms of Bank America, they have 12%, right? But the Apple trade is a big position on their balance sheet, right? They have a massive weight of Apple, and you need to, when it grows that much, kind of rebalance your portfolio. And Matt, that's sort of what they were doing with their Apple shares, right? How much did they sell their stake?
So they sold half of the shares that they held, and they had sold some in the first quarter as well. So they sold 50% of what was remaining. In the first quarter, Apple was 50% or 40%-ish of their portfolio. So you have one stock.
It's too much. Too many eggs in one basket.
Exactly. And I don't want to dampen your enthusiasm, but I don't think he was calling a top or anything necessarily on the Apple stock. He looks at these companies as companies versus stocks, right? So he wants to own the company. It could be a comment on what he thinks about the earnings power going forward. And he has some concerns about China as well, doing business in China.
But you know, it looks like he's calling a top, right? And
fair.
From today,
I don't disagree.
Like Katherine said, from today, if you look back at where he sold, it was.
He's not the greatest investor of all time for no reason.
To be fair, from kind of mid-April, the stock Apple shares are up almost 30%. So you kind of can get some of it. Is there anything, though, you as someone who follows Bloomberg, follows Berkshire, and you follow Buffett, that he is making some statement in terms of the macro environment, China or elsewhere, or more globally?
So I would say specifically to Apple, at the May annual meeting, he got questions because they had sold, I think it was like 10 to 13% of their position at that point. So they got some questions on why would you do this. And he talked about really thinking that corporate tax rate would go up in the U.S., so maybe he wanted to harvest some of these gains beforehand. And he had talked about really, aside from not the U.S. environment, but the Apple's dependence on China was a concern for him. So I don't know if it's necessarily a call on the macro environment. I think the timing of the meltdown and this happening is coincidental.